So here today, we're going to be going over the importance of construction recruiting and onboarding. As a general contractor here in New York and as a business owner, I completely understand the frustrations of trying to hire and recruit talent within your organization. And then you have to keep that talent within your organization. So some of the things and some of the success stories I'm going to share with you today, but mostly I'm here because of the struggle it's been lately. It's been very, very difficult for me and my organization, as well as others, to not only find that talent, but to bring that talent into my organization with a successful plan. And I know Conor is going to talk more about the onboarding and how to integrate that successful plan. And I'm going to talk a little bit on that recruiting process. But it has absolutely has been a struggle for me in particular in New York, where we have a lot of people leaving New York State in droves. There is definitely statistics out there that show that there's more people leaving the construction industry than they are entering. I am fortunate to be on some construction networking organizations like the Associated General Contractors, and we have the ability to get some insight and feedback from state agencies, from New York State agencies like the New York State Construction Fund, et cetera. And they've actually admitted to us that as a state agency, they don't have enough people to manage the fund that they're tasked to be given. What does that mean? They have more money and they have more projects than they have staff for. So that's actually creating a choke point at the state level that they can't manage and release all those projects at once because they don't have the infrastructure with human resources to manage that on a state level. So as much as we're on the private side struggling, the public side, meaning state agencies, federal agencies, et cetera, are also going through the same struggles and the same frustrations that we are. But luckily, we have me and Conor here today. They're going to teach you a couple tricks and some of our best experience advice on how to navigate some of those things. So some of the key learning objectives that we're going to be going through today is how to set up your company for a successful recruiting process, some of the active and passive recruitment techniques that I have learned, and tips and tricks for onboarding your new employee. So let's talk about setting yourself up for success, for a successful recruitment process. The first thing that you need to do is understand what is it that you and the company need to hire for. Okay. So if this is your first hire or you already have like numerous hires already, the first thing that you need to do always starts at what it is, what's the position, and what are the job duties that you are trying to find someone else to do. One of my biggest tips that I've learned through the years, and Conor can attest to this, is to do a time management study of your typical work week. Okay. So if you're spending the majority of your time doing repetitive, meaningless tasks, as opposed to other things that only you as the business owner can be doing or should be doing, you need to identify what those tasks are and start writing those things down. And what you're doing is you're actually creating a job description of the position that you're hiring for. So let's just talk with estimators, because that's actually one of the biggest fulfillments that I work with clients on. If you're a subcontractor and you just don't have any more time to sit down at night, burn the candle, and do your takeoffs, but it's a necessary part of the process, then likely you should be looking for someone to help you with that, especially if it's consuming more than 20 or 30% of your week, and you have the ability to then identify that that's a time-consuming thing, that it's a necessary time-consuming thing, and you should be looking for someone to help you with that. In order for you to grow the business, you want to be able to delegate those types of tasks out. So doing a time management study is a very easy trick that someone like an executive coach like Conor will help you do. One of my first hires was an estimator because I just didn't have time at night while I was running projects during the day to do my estimates. As you start writing down all the tasks that you're doing, you're going to start finding out, is this next hire, is this an estimator? Is this a project manager? Is it someone that you're going to put in the field so that you can spend less time in the field, you are finding out where is your time being wasted, and that's going to gravitate the answer to what you should be hiring for and recruiting for. So as you make that job title, that position, and those job duties, you just created more than half of the job posting that you're going to put out online on LinkedIn and Monster and Indeed in order to get people to be attracted to that position and provide their resumes. In addition to the job title, the description, and the duties, you also want to make sure that the job posting includes certain things about your company culture and maybe like a little bit about the direction that you're trying to bring the company. Meaning, you're talking about the vision. What you're doing is you're providing a selling point within the job posting that might attract some better talent, which we'll talk about just in a minute. Okay. In my experience, there's two types of recruiting. There's active recruiting and passive recruiting. I'm going to talk about passive recruiting first, because when people think about recruiting in general, normally what they're thinking about is the passive recruiting, which consists of putting a job posting on Indeed, on LinkedIn, or Monster, or one of those other ones, and getting those resumes in. That is a passive way for you to meet new talent. Now, I don't want to discredit passive recruitment because I've had a lot of success in this process using this method, but it's just one of two different ways. Okay. So passive is putting a job posting out, waiting for maybe the fish to bite on the bait, which is waiting for the people to send their resumes before you can actually reach out to them to set up an interview. Active recruitment is also extremely powerful. Okay. And if done the right way, it can actually speed up the recruiting process because it doesn't necessarily need for you to review someone's resume, for example, or do an interview. Okay. Active recruitment means that you as a business owner, you have time now to get out of your office to go meet new subcontractors, meet maybe some insurance agents, meet some bonding agents, meet other clients, and maybe join a construction networking group where you're going to meet other competitors of yours. You might meet some of the staff of your competition. You're going to run into people that are estimators. You're going to run into people that are project managers. As you meet these people, you now know who they are. And hopefully, if you do your job right, they remember who you are. Okay. And if you start talking to them about the successes, maybe some of the struggles and triumphs of your business, you're deepening a connection with these people, which is establishing a little bit more of a relationship. Okay. You never know who might be a client is something that we hear very, very often, but also you never know who might be your employee. So you always want to go out very open-minded, and you may not know at that moment why you meet somebody. Okay. So regardless, you might meet someone at a Yankees baseball game, maybe on the railroad, maybe at a construction networking event. Be open-minded. Take note of what this person does, their experience, and what they do for the organization that they currently work for. That is active recruitment. Active recruitment means you already know about their character, you already know about their qualifications. It's much easier if you're looking for an estimator to call the 3 or 4 estimators that you already came in contact with over the last 5 years than it is to do the passive recruitment, which is just wait for resumes. And if you're really, really good, you'll do both at the same time. Okay. So that's the difference between active and passive recruitment. My wife taught me this. She was a recruiter for a major airline. I think it's a really, really interesting way in order to separate out two different styles of recruitment. Let's talk about the resumes that you're going to get in during the passive recruitment. You need to know what you're looking for before you start looking. Okay. Don't start looking at resumes and be distracted by the shiny object on the resume. You want to know exactly what it is that you need selfishly for you and your company to succeed. So having that job duty and description that you made during your time management study backs into this. Okay. Some of the things that I like to look for on the resumes is what type of experience does this person have, and how long have they been in the industry outside of college or education since they graduated. Okay. Nothing substitutes boots on the ground industry experience like construction. You can't just learn, there's no way you're going to learn everything in a university classroom. It's just the start of your career. So you want to make sure that on the resumes, what I like to look for is what have they been working for, on, and how long have they been working on something. Fast forwarding to the interview, you finally find a couple resumes that resonate with you. They hit all the check boxes. Okay. Keep in mind that not everyone that you reach out to for an interview is going to say yes. Some people might say no, thank you. Some people might have found a job already. Some people are just not going to pull you back flat out. This is the reality of the industry as it is today. But once you're in that interview and that person has accepted and you're now face to face with them, keep a few things in mind. Okay. Number one, you're a business owner. You want to limit your time. Your time is extremely valuable to you. So having someone else do a pre-screen before you is going to be tremendously helpful for two reasons. Number one, it's going to limit your time as a business owner. That person might be a complete waste of your time, and there's no way that person's going to fit into your culture. Someone else can figure that initial gut reaction out. Okay. The second reason why it's good is that you're now empowering your current staff to help make decisions with you. Meaning, if you value the people in your organization and you want to empower them, put them in and have them do a pre-screen of the interview. That's going to get them experience talking to new people. That's going to get them buy-in that their opinion matters. It's also, again, going to limit your time. That your key person is going to say, that's a waste of time. You should not meet with them. Or this person was very interesting, hit all the categories. I think, Mr. Business Owner, that you should meet with them as soon as possible. Okay. Understand, once you as the business owner are in that interview with this individual, with this candidate, it's a two-way interview. As much as you are interviewing them, they're interviewing you. So you want to make sure that you're talking about your company culture and other things within your organization that's going to empower them and so that they feel a sense of belonging. Okay. Essentially, what you're doing is you're selling your company, meaning you're giving them reasons why they should join your company and not the other person that they might get an offer from. Okay. So make sure that you understand, as much as you're interviewing them, they're interviewing you. Just because you send an offer out doesn't mean they're going to accept. They need to buy into the company that they're going to work for. There's some other interview tips and tricks that Connor and myself have put together for anyone on this webinar today. They're going to get a free copy of our top 10 tips and tricks. And anyone listening, maybe on YouTube, just send us an email and we'll make sure we get that over to you as well. There's some really, really interesting and very productive tips that we are able to provide on this PDF sheet. Okay, so now this person has accepted the offer. They're about to join. Conor is going to take it from here and explain what a successful onboarding process is once you have identified and extended an offer to that ideal candidate to help you. Conor?
When we look at onboarding an employee, there's basically three questions that I start with every time. And this is the basically foundation of your curriculum. So we'll start here with just those three simple questions. Who are we training? Oh, that's the wrong marker. There we go. Who are we training? What are we training? And how are we training? These three things, literally everything you need to put into a curriculum stems from one of these 3 points. So just have this in the back of your mind as you go through this curriculum. We want to take a look at who are we hiring? Pretty much any employee you hire is going to fall into one of these 4 categories. New business used to be called sales. People love business development now, but essentially this is the part of your business that is creating business. Operations, processing the business that's been created. Accounting, administrative, like I said, most people are going to fall into one of these four categories. And a quick tip on this, when you're hiring, the more your job descriptions fit into a single one of these categories, the easier it is to scale your business up for growth. We can talk more about that later, but just again, quick tip there. Joel used the example of an estimator earlier, so we'll stick with that. That's going to be new business. So when we look at how do we want to train an estimator to help us with our new business, no matter who we're hiring, I like to start with the perspective of a customer life cycle. Every company has a customer life cycle. It's the experience your customers or clients have from the first time they meet you till the completion of that transaction leading to the next one. It's going to be different in every company, but what I have up here is just a basic construction company journey. So we have a relationship that can be a digital relationship, meaning a subscription to a service that provides leads on bids. It can be someone you've known and worked with for 30 years that refers you to business. That creates the bid opportunity. From there, we have the estimating process. And after that bid is submitted, we either win the job, lose the job, presuming it's won. We have pre-construction planning. We have materials acquisition. We have the actual construction process. We have final invoicing, retain the next job. Again, there's 1,000 steps between all of these, and your journey is going to be a little different than the next person's, but this gives you kind of a glimpse of what we're talking about when we train from a customer life cycle. So in this example of a estimator, we first want to look at the core areas they're going to work in. So an estimator sometimes has something to do with the relationship. Sometimes that's more the business owner's purview. But in this example, we'll say it is relationship all the way to whether or not they won or lost the bid. That's their core responsibilities. So the bulk of your training is going to involve what does it take to get a customer from the beginning of this process to the end of their responsibility. After that, we have crossover. So your estimator may interact with other parts of this process. For example, materials acquisition. This could be a crossover area where during that process, the estimator is involved with the project manager. In terms of invoicing, accounting may have something to do with the estimator. They may have questions. In these areas, when you can afford to train like this, it pays dividends down the road, I would say tenfold. Crossover relationships, when you have this new hire that can actually spend a day with someone whose job it is to acquire materials, they can understand their world, they can understand the challenges they face, their workflow. The more they understand about how that process works, the easier it's going to be for them to interact with it when they're actually doing the job. So again, anytime you identify a crossover point, you want to have that be part of your training. So when we look at how to actually build out a curriculum, there's just a couple of steps here that I would recommend when you build the process. So train your core areas from a reporting perspective. You tell an employee what to care about by what they have to report on, whether that's weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. Those are really important milestones for an employee. So in the example of an estimator, we might look at how many bids are being processed per week. What's the closing percentage on those bids? What is the average bid value? When an employee has to come and report that to you monthly, that is naturally going to help them care about those things. So when you go back up to this customer life cycle, all of those reporting points, you want to identify how can they influence those reports along this journey. And every time there's a point where they can influence it, that is a training point. That is something you want to spend time on. Also, while reporting is a great place to start, there's going to be some X factors, which are just not naturally involved in reporting. Examples would be checking in on blue chip relationships. You have a relationship that's really valuable to your business that your estimator frequently interacts with. You want to check in with that. You want to know that. There's no report that tells you that. That's just part of the training. So I'm sorry, that's just part of the experience of working there. So you want that to become a part of the training, even though there's not a direct report related to it. Um, Again, training crossover relationships, the more you can have them spend time with the people that they're interacting with, the smoother those relationships will be. So when you take those 2 points, and again, use this customer life cycle to build that curriculum, you're literally working backwards from reporting to get everything you need from that employee. So this is, again, a quick example of this. This is something I do with my clients. I offer a free hour if you would like to go through this process where we'll identify your life cycle. We can do an example with an employee of your choice and start to identify some of the points that make sense to train. If you'd like to do that, just text me your name and business name. I'll put my cell phone right up here for you. Wow, messed up my own phone number. How about that? 425 429 1850. So like I said, give me a text and I'll be happy to reach back out to you and set up an hour where we can spend some time diving into your new training module. Joel, back to you.
Thank you, Connor. Before we take some questions here, I do want to give just some general tip and advice. And I know Connor could probably attest to this, and I'll let him add to this, but it's going to get harder before it gets easier. It's going to take more of your time at first in order to get more of your time back later. So if you're already, and Connor's going to talk about this, like Connor's clients who are business owners are probably working, they're not working 40 hours, they're working 68 hours a week. You need to put in more time in order to do the recruiting, the onboarding successfully, and the training successfully in order for it to pay off in 3 months, 6 months down the road. Okay. Connor, do you want to add to that? Because you're executive coach. You probably see this a lot.
I do. And it is, like you said, they are working, business owners are working a lot of hours already. What we try to focus on is that final picture of that employee, full speed, completely up to speed on what they're doing. So maybe that's 6 months out. What is your life like? What is it like at work now that this employee is hitting everything? It helps make putting in a 70-hour week possible when you're able to focus on what's coming up for you down the road. One of the things that just drives me crazy is when you hear somebody says they sold their business for 10 million, for 15 million, and you hear people say, "Oh, I was so lucky." It's like, not lucky at all. That person worked unbelievably hard to get their business to that. They spent the 70-hour weeks when they had to. So it is brutal, but it's a part of the gig if you want to make this work. So, you got to grin and bear those 2 weeks of training. And again, focus on what it's like 6 months from now when this employee is helping your business grow.
Awesome. So we are going to open up to some questions with some of the participants here today. Okay. So yeah, one of the things that if you guys are business owners out there and this is your first time or you're looking for that first hire, understand one thing. Okay. It's going to take more of your time before you're going to get your time back. Okay. I'll let Connor kind of add in a little of his own insight here, but like I know, and my wife knows this, where when I tell her I'm bringing someone new into my organization, my days and my weeks are about to get longer for a bit before they get shorter. Okay. We need to make sure that you're finding the right person so you don't waste your time. The last thing, everything that Connor and I are striving for is so that you don't find out 2 or 3 months later that this was a disaster of a hire. We're trying to set up some practices so that it's a successful hire. Okay, but just understand it will be more of your time first before it gets shorter. Connor, do you want to add to that a little bit?
Yeah, I find because this is a big struggle for clients, they're already working 50 hours a week easily before they start adding on the fact that they're going to have to spend 3 hours a morning for 2 weeks straight training someone. Those numbers are scary when you look at it if you're just looking in the context of those 2 weeks. What we try to do is look at 6 months out. What is my business going to look like because of this hire? How is my week day to day going to be different because of this hire? And once you're able to focus on what the future of your company looks like, it becomes a little easier to put in that week, that second week. That is tough. There is no doubt it is tough. It drives me crazy when you hear somebody sells their business for 10, $15 million and people say, oh, so lucky. No, not lucky. Worked unmercifully hard to build something of that value and sell it. But there is some really hard work in the process of getting there. And training is one of those times where it's tough, but you got to push through that week. And again, if you focus on what we're going to look like in 6 months, it's a lot easier to dig in and swallow those tough weeks.
Yes, I would completely agree. And actually, I call it reverse engineering. Where do you want this person to be in 3 to 6 months? And then start making some mini goals that back into that long-term goal is probably the most helpful thing. And just make sure if you were a new hire, you want to feel supported and you want to feel like you're mentored, make sure that you as the business owner are opening the door and providing that type of mentorship and allowing that new hire to come to you so that they don't feel like they're just abandoned to figure it out on their own. So I think we have, we're going to open it up to some questions. We're right at the 30-minute mark. I want to open up to some questions. I know if anyone that's looking for a question, you could kind of do a hand raise or something like that. I see one person, Ian, is in the audience. I'm going to kind of give him the opportunity to ask a question here. Let's see. Ian, are you there? Maybe not. Just raised his hand. Allowed to talk. Sorry.
Unmute.
There you go. Yes, sir.
How you doing? I'm Ian. I'm a GC from New York. Do you have any? What are some of red flags that you might see when you're hiring somebody and try to avoid somebody who could be toxic?
Great question. That's something that you definitely need to kind of get in the habit for looking for. Unfortunately, there are definitely toxic employees out there. Any business owner will tell you that they're definitely out there. On the resume side, and again, I'm let Conor kind of add his insight on this. On the resume side, one of the things I do not like is when I see someone just bouncing around every few months. I am more looking selfishly, when you join my organization, I want you to stay. I don't want to just teach you some certain things and then have you leave and jump ship. So I like to find people that have an established track record of staying in one spot for a bit, growing, and then maybe moving on, as opposed to someone that just has a long resume with short stays. So Conor, do you want to add anything? Red flags for a toxic employee, I think was the question.
Definitely on the running background checks and things like that, I think are standard. One thing, defining a red flag employee, there's employees that are going to be a disaster no matter where they go, but there's red flag employees for your culture where this may be a good, hardworking person that just is never going to fit with your culture. They don't see things the right way. So if you have 1 or 2 marquee employees that you really trust, that have been with you for a long time, that understand what it means to work for your business, what your company culture is, put them next to those interviewees, have them spend a half hour, have the 4 of you go to lunch together and get feedback from your staff because they see things through a different lens than you do as an owner. Feedback from staff you trust about whether an employee is going to fit culture-wise is a good way to keep some red flag employees out of the picture.
Yes, agree. If anyone else has any questions, just give us a hand raise. We'll answer them as they come in. On the PDF, interview tips and tricks. One of the things that Conor just said is on that checklist, which is, are you looking at their resumes? Are you looking at their references? Are you calling those references? All those tips and tricks are on the PDF that will be sent out to everyone today. And if you're listening in on YouTube land, we'll get that over to you as well if you're interested. I think another tip I can provide with toxic employees is like, I think Conor actually hit it. And it's actually, ironically, it's on the list, is like, if I feel that this interview is going very well and they're hitting all the points, I actually like to bring in one of my core valued team members into the interview. And then I like to leave. I like to leave the interview, let them chat with my team member, for two reasons. One, I want the person that I want to attract to understand the culture that they might be working for. And secondly, I value the feedback of my staff. I think Conor just said this. So something that I may not have caught on in the interview because I was so distracted maybe with their superb qualifications, my project manager may pick up on that I necessarily didn't initially see. So those are other tips that we can provide to help identify those red flags. All right. I don't think there's any other questions, but I do want to thank everyone for their time here today. Conor, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you over the last few months.
Thanks for having me. Agreed. Absolutely looking forward to more of it.
All right. Everyone have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.